let's make the cutest ever newborn bonnets on our knitting machines. For this tutorial, I will be using my Addi knitting machine. However, you can certainly use your Cinche or similar brand knitting machine. As long as it has 46 needles, you should be fine. This is the fastest project that I have ever made, and it uses very little material. So it is a win-win in my book, and it's super cute. I am using Malabrigo Rios in the colorway Cosmos. If you guys have been following us for a while, you know this is one of my favorite yarns to use on the knitting machines. We are going to start on the first white needle and cast on. While yes, we are flat panel knitting this, you do not have to turn your machine to flat panel knitting as long as you pay attention to where you are. So again, start on the first white needle and you're going to cast on 40 stitches. So on my Addi knitting machine, there are numbers on them, and I go until it gets to the 43rd needle because again, we skipped those 3 black ones. This is the last one. You're going to pull your yarn over the little red tooth there. Do not let it go to the inside of the tooth because if you do, it will drop that stitch. You need to pull it on the outside of that tooth. So we're just going to slowly crank backwards and go all the way around back to the beginning, and make sure that you go slow, okay? So watch here. We want it to go past that. We have to get it past that red, and then once it flips down, you can go back the other way. Now keep in mind, if you go too far, it will increase the stitch, which we don't want to do. So you really have to kind of slow down, especially if you're not familiar with flat panel knitting. Just slow down and pay attention, and then once you get the hang of it, you'll be good to go. Make sure when you get to your very beginning and end stitch that when you go back through after the needle drops, give it a little tiny tug. This will just make your edges a lot nicer and neater and not as gappy. Another thing to mention, they do make the Addi stoppers for flat panel knitting. I personally don't use them, but you can if that makes you more comfortable. So this was waste yarn, okay? I did not do a specific row count on this. I think it was around 10 rows. That's what I usually do for my waste yarn. This is just because of the closure method that we're going to be using for this bonnet. So now we're going to add on our actual color for our bonnet, which is the blue color, the Cosmos. And we're going to drop quite a bit of yarn down in the center because we're going to be using this to crochet the front border of the face. And I'll show you guys that here in a little bit. Just to drop it down in your machine like you're fixing to just continue knitting, and that's what we're going to do. And just kind of pinch it down with your thumb and start going slowly, and you'll see the needles grabbing it. Then you can let go after a few needles go in. So we're going to reset our counter, and now we're going to start counting our rows. Now keep in mind that because we are flat panel knitting, our row counter is not going to count every single time and go back and forth. So we're going to be counting 14 because it's only going to be counting every other row that we do. It's going to count when we come back to that first one. So 14 rows, which technically equals 28 in total. And just, again, watch your stitches, pay attention, go back and forth, go slow when you get to the end, and make sure that your yarn is always down on the outside of your tooth, because if it isn't, it's going to drop that stitch. So now we're just working on our last 2 rows, and when we get back, we're going to be casting off with the cinched cast off method, and I'll drop a link in the description box below for a more in-depth tutorial on casting on and casting off. Make sure to go past that little red tooth there at the very end, and we're going to cut this. We don't have to leave as much tail as we did at the beginning. We're going to leave a little bit of a shorter one because we're doing the cinched cast off. So we just need enough yarn to take all of our stitches off of our machine, and then that'll be plenty. You don't have to have all the excess because we're not crocheting this edge, we're cinching it closed. So go ahead and put that on a needle. A angled needle works best for the knitting machines. Turn your machine sideways, wherever is most comfortable for you, and slowly drop your needles one at a time and start taking them off of the machine. We've just taken the last stitch off of our machine, and this is what it looks like. Here's a more close-up view. You can see the different cast on and cast off method that we used for this. So the front, where the face is going to be, we did the waste yarn at the beginning, and we have all the excess yarn we're going to be using to crochet finish the border. And then at the very end is where we did our cinched cast off method. So let's go ahead and work both of these. I'm just going to do just a light cinch at the back just to kind of make it take its shape. We're going to be finishing this last, but we're going to go ahead and cinch it just a little bit for now. Now we're going to do the border, which is probably my favorite part. For whatever reason, I find it very relaxing and fun. Grab your working yarn, your big long tail that you left at the beginning. I'm going to be using my Clover 4mm crochet hook to crochet the border of this bonnet. You can use a larger hook if you want to. This is just the one that I prefer. So go into your first loop, and then you're going to yarn over and pull through once. Then you're going to go into your second loop, yarn over, pull through both loops. So then you'll be left with one on your hook. Then you're going to go in the next loop, yarn over, pull through both. And we're going to repeat this all the way around until we get to the very end. Whenever you get to the end, just pull your long tail through that last loop, and there you have it. You're all finished with your finished border. All you have to do now is remove your waste yarn. So this is what it looks like whenever you've removed your waste yarn. It's starting to take form. We just have a few more things to do. So go ahead and pick up your bonnet, and then we're going to flip it inside out to do the cinched part. And I typically like to just kind of get it as flat as I can, and then I will try to shape it the best that I can, and then just cinch it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start sewing. Now you do have to kind of sew down a little bit onto the bottom edge until your knit piece is flat, and I'll show you that here in just a second. So I just go back and forth as close to the top edge as I can because I don't want it to be like a bulky sewn edge. So just go to the top as close as you can to keep it secure. And we're just going to go back and forth until we hit where the curve stops. And when it starts to go straight, then we're going to stop right there because that's where the baby's neck is going to go. Now I just go back through the same way that I came from, and we're going to get to our little cinched area. And I also sew this part just to keep it extra secure. And again, just go in as close as you can to that top edge so that it's not bulky. When you get to the end of your cinched area, you're going to start tying knots. And what I do is I kind of pull through till I have a little bit of loop, and then I will just kind of tie a knot. And I'll do several of these before I call it complete. To be honest, I mean, this is a newborn bonnet. I don't think it's going to have a lot of rough and tough on it, but you still want it to hold up well. So I wouldn't go overkill, but I would do just enough to keep it secure. And then when you're finished tying your knots, we are going to pull our needle up onto our yarn a little bit, and we're going to cut it, and then we're going to weave our edges in. So here is what we have so far. If you notice, we have this one long string left, which we're actually going to use as our tie. And all that I do is just tie one little tiny knot at the bottom just to keep the yarn from unraveling. But I personally like the look of just the one string, especially for like the newborn photo props. I just think that it's very minimal and nice. Now, if you wanted to do like a more braided cord, you could do that and just sew it on when you're finished, but I like the look of just the single one. So then I cut another piece similar to the same size, and I go in on the inside of the two edge stitches, the same spot on the opposite side. And then we're just going to tie a double knot, and then we're going to use a crochet hook to weave in our edges, so that way it doesn't come off. Go ahead and tie a knot on your newly added piece of yarn for your other tie. Try to get it in the same spot if you can, and then just trim any edges. This is what it looks like, you guys. It is finished. It is so cute. It is so fast, and it uses so little yarn. And to be honest with you, if you market this as a newborn photo prop, it's probably going to bring you more money in sales than like an adult beanie or something like that. I do want to make a yarn weight disclaimer. While both of these are technically worsted weight yarns, if you notice the pink bonnet is definitely larger than the blue bonnet. They both fit the newborn size head, but the blue one is definitely a little bit more stretched, which I kind of like that look. The pink one is definitely more bulky and thick, which is also adorable. It really just depends on your personal taste. I did want to mention to you guys though that yes, these are both still worsted weight yarns, but even using the same pattern, they can differ in size depending on which yarn that you choose. So please keep that in mind if you notice some inconsistencies with your sizing. So that's all. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. I will definitely be back with more knitting machine tutorials. Be sure to click the subscribe button below.